The phone call that shattered my world came on a Tuesday evening while I was helping my 15-year-old daughter Madison with her college scholarship applications. Carmen's voice cut through the receiver like ice. "I'm sorry, Bonita, but Madison can't come to the wedding. It's adults only. She's just too young for this kind of celebration." My hands trembled as I gripped the phone tighter. Madison looked up from her violin music sheets, her bright eyes filled with confusion. "Then we won't be attending," I replied quietly, my voice steady despite the storm brewing inside me. 3 days after that devastating phone call, I found myself scrolling through Carmen's Instagram at 2 in the morning, unable to sleep. What I discovered made my blood run cold. There, in glossy wedding planning photos, were teenagers everywhere. The groom's 16-year-old nephew posed proudly in his usher tuxedo. 2 14-year-old flower girls from Derek's family twirled in their lavender dresses. A junior bridesmaid, who couldn't have been older than 13, smiled beside Carmen in the bridal shop. My coffee mug slipped from my hands, shattering against the kitchen floor. Madison appeared in the doorway, her long auburn hair messy from sleep. "Mom, what's wrong?" I couldn't speak. The evidence glowed from my phone screen like an accusation. Carmen had lied. This wasn't about age restrictions, this was personal. Over the next few days, I started making calls. Aunt Beverly mentioned how excited she was to see little Sophie as a flower girl. Cousin Jennifer talked about her son Ryan being so honored to escort guests to their seats. Everyone knew about the teenagers in the wedding party. Everyone except me. I watched Madison practice her violin that afternoon, her fingers dancing across the strings with the precision that had earned her a full scholarship to Whitmore Academy of Music. Her talent had always made Carmen uncomfortable. Even as children, Carmen struggled with my achievements. But Madison's gifts seemed to trigger something deeper in my sister. The memories came flooding back. Carmen's tight smile when Madison won the state violin competition last spring. Her dismissive comments about pushy stage mothers when Madison performed at our father's birthday party. The way she changed the subject whenever anyone mentioned Madison's upcoming conservatory auditions. I called my mother that evening, hoping for support. Patricia speaking. "Mom, it's Bonita. I need to talk to you about Carmen's wedding." A heavy sigh came through the phone. "Bonita, honey, you're being dramatic. Carmen just wants an elegant affair. Surely you can understand that. There are other teenagers in the wedding party, Mom. I've seen the photos." The silence stretched for several seconds. "Well, those are different circumstances. Derek's family has specific traditions. So Madison isn't family enough? You're twisting this into something it's not. Carmen loves Madison. You know that. But I didn't know that anymore." As I hung up the phone, I realized that everyone in my family had become experts at making excuses for Carmen's behavior. They had been doing it for so long that they couldn't see the pattern anymore. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to argue. I was going to let Carmen have exactly what she wanted. A wedding without Madison and me. But this was just the beginning. Madison found me staring out the kitchen window the next morning. "Mom, I've been thinking about Aunt Carmen's wedding." I turned to face my daughter, this remarkable young woman who handled rejection with more grace than most adults. "What about it, sweetheart?" "I think she's jealous of me." Madison's words were matter-of-fact, lacking any trace of self-pity. "I've noticed how she acts when people congratulate me on my music or grades. She gets this look." My heart broke for my daughter's premature wisdom. At 15, she shouldn't have to understand adult jealousy and manipulation. But here she was, seeing clearly what I had been making excuses for. "You're very perceptive, Madison. But this isn't your fault or your problem to solve." "I know, Mom. I just want you to know that I'm okay. We don't need to be around people who don't celebrate us." In that moment, I knew I had raised her right. Carmen might have excluded Madison from one event, but she had inadvertently shown my daughter her own worth. The wedding was still 6 weeks away, but something fundamental had already shifted in our family dynamics forever. The campaign began 3 weeks later, with a phone call from Aunt Beverly. "Bonita, sweetheart, I think there's been a misunderstanding about the wedding. Carmen is beside herself thinking you won't be there. I balanced the phone between my ear and shoulder while folding Madison's laundry. There's no misunderstanding, Aunt Bev. Carmen made her position clear. But family is family, dear. Surely you can work this out. Maybe Madison could stay with me that evening. You could still attend the reception. The suggestion hit me like a slap. Even Aunt Beverly, who had always been kind to Madison, was suggesting my daughter should be hidden away like some embarrassing secret. The calls continued throughout the week. Uncle Frank phoned to lecture me about family loyalty. Cousin Jennifer sent lengthy text messages about forgiveness and moving forward. Each conversation followed the same script. Minimize Carmen's actions, pressure me to compromise, and frame my boundary as the real problem. Then my mother showed up unannounced on a Saturday morning. We need to talk. Patricia pushed past me into the house, her lips pressed into a thin line of disapproval. Madison looked up from her homework spread across the dining room table. Hi, Grandma. Hello, dear. Why don't you go practice your violin while your mother and I chat? I recognized the dismissal for what it was. Madison can stay. This concerns her too. Bonita, some conversations are between adults. Some conversations affect children whether adults want to acknowledge it or not. Patricia's jaw tightened. She had never liked being challenged, especially not in front of Madison. Fine. Madison, your Aunt Carmen is heartbroken that your mother is being so stubborn about this wedding situation. Madison set down her pencil carefully. Grandma, Aunt Carmen said I was too young to attend, but there are other teenagers in the wedding party. That doesn't seem fair. Life isn't always fair, sweetheart. Sometimes we have to accept decisions that hurt our feelings. I felt my temper rising. So Madison should accept being excluded while other kids her age are celebrated? Those children have specific roles in the ceremony. It's different. How is it different, Mom? Patricia's face flushed. Because Carmen is the bride, and what the bride wants matters most. The honesty was refreshing, even if it was ugly. Patricia wasn't even pretending this was about age or appropriateness anymore. This was about Carmen getting whatever she wanted, regardless of who it hurt. Madison spoke up again, her voice steady. Grandma, if Aunt Carmen wanted me there, she would have included me. She made a choice. Mom is just respecting that choice. Patricia turned to me with desperation in her eyes. Bonita, you're teaching Madison to hold grudges. Is that really what you want? I'm teaching Madison that she has value and doesn't have to beg for a place at someone else's table. The argument that followed was explosive. Patricia accused me of being vindictive and raising Madison to be entitled. She claimed I was ruining Carmen's special day out of spite. She threatened that the whole family would suffer if I didn't back down. Throughout it all, Madison sat quietly, watching the adults in her life reveal their true priorities. When Patricia finally left, slamming the door behind her, Madison came and sat beside me on the couch. I'm sorry this is happening because of me, Mom. I pulled her close. This isn't because of you, sweetheart. This is because some people in our family have forgotten how to treat each other with respect and kindness. That evening, Carmen called for the first time since the original conversation. Bonita, Mom told me about your fight today. I think you're taking this whole thing too seriously. Am I? Look, I'm sorry if Madison's feelings are hurt, but this is my wedding. I get to decide who fits the vision Derek and I have created. And Madison doesn't fit? Carmen's laugh was sharp. Come on, Bonita. You know how Madison can be. She draws attention to herself with all that violin stuff and her academic achievements. This day needs to be about Derek and me, not about your daughter's latest accomplishment. The mask had finally slipped. Carmen wasn't hiding her jealousy anymore. Thank you for being honest, I said quietly. So you'll come? Maybe leave Madison with a babysitter? No, Carmen. We won't be attending. And now I understand why. I hung up before she could respond. Madison was listening from the hallway, and I knew she had heard everything. Mom? Yes, sweetheart? I'm really glad you're my mother. In that moment, I realized that protecting Madison from this toxic dynamic was the most important thing I could do. Carmen's wedding was still 3 weeks away, but the real battle lines had been drawn. My family wanted me to sacrifice my daughter's dignity to maintain their version of peace. I wouldn't do it. Not today, not ever. 2 weeks before the wedding, the truth came out in the most unexpected way. I was picking Madison up from violin lessons when her teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, pulled me aside with a concerned expression. "Bonita, I hope you don't mind me asking, but did something happen with your sister recently? She called last week with some very strange questions about Madison's scholarship." My stomach dropped. "What kind of questions?" "She wanted to know if the scholarship was really merit-based, or if you had somehow influenced the decision. She asked about Madison's practice schedule and whether she was being pushed too hard academically. She seemed to be suggesting that Madison's achievements weren't genuine." The world tilted slightly. Carmen had been investigating Madison's scholarship behind my back. Did she say why she was asking? Mrs. Rodriguez looked uncomfortable. She claimed she was concerned about Madison's well-being, but honestly, it felt more like she was trying to find fault with the scholarship or your parenting. I told her that Madison is one of the most naturally gifted and self-motivated students I've ever taught. That evening, I called my friend Sarah, who worked at Madison's school. "Sarah, this might sound strange, but has anyone from my family contacted the school about Madison recently?" "Actually, yes. Your sister called the guidance counselor last month asking about Madison's grades and college applications. She said she was concerned that Madison was under too much pressure to excel. The counselor couldn't share specific information, but she did tell Carmen that Madison's achievements were entirely her own." The pieces started falling into place. Carmen hadn't just decided to exclude Madison from the wedding on a whim. She had been systematically trying to undermine my daughter's accomplishments for months. I spent that weekend doing my own investigation. I scrolled through Carmen's social media posts from the past year, looking for clues I had missed. There it was. Subtle digs at helicopter parents around the time Madison won the regional violin competition. Posts about the importance of natural talent versus forced achievement when Madison received her scholarship letter. Comments about children these days being robbed of their childhood when Madison performed at the spring recital. Carmen had been building a narrative that painted Madison as an overworked, overpressured child and me as a pushy stage mother. She was trying to diminish Madison's genuine talents and hard work. But why? What was driving this systematic campaign against my 15-year-old daughter? The answer came during a conversation with my cousin Rachel, who had remained neutral in the wedding drama. "Bonita, I probably shouldn't tell you this, but Carmen has been saying some concerning things about Madison lately." "What kind of things?" "She told Derek's family that she worries about how much attention Madison gets for her music. She said it's not healthy for a teenager to be so focused on achievement. She's been suggesting that Madison's success makes other kids in the family feel bad about themselves." "Other kids? What other kids?" Rachel was quiet for a moment. "I think she's planning ahead. She and Derek want children soon, and Carmen seems worried that Madison will overshadow their future kids. She's already talking about how family gatherings always become about Madison's latest accomplishment." The revelation was staggering. Carmen wasn't just jealous of Madison's current success. She was preemptively trying to minimize my daughter's achievements to protect her future children from feeling inferior. That night, I sat Madison down and explained what I had learned. "So Aunt Carmen has been telling people I'm not really talented?" Madison asked, her voice small. "She's been trying to suggest that your achievements are somehow artificial or unhealthy. But everyone who actually knows you sees the truth." Madison was quiet for several minutes, processing this information. Finally, she looked up at me with clear eyes. "Mom, I feel sorry for her." "Sorry for her?" "She's so insecure that she has to tear down a 15-year-old to feel better about herself. That must be exhausting." My daughter's emotional maturity continued to amaze me. While Carmen was plotting to diminish her, Madison was responding with compassion. But I wasn't feeling quite so generous. Carmen hadn't just excluded Madison from one event. She had been conducting a months-long campaign to discredit my daughter's character and achievements. She was trying to rewrite Madison's story to make herself feel better. The wedding was now a week away, and I realized this was about much more than one evening. Carmen saw Madison as a threat to her future happiness, her future children, her place in the family hierarchy. Excluding Madison from the wedding was just the opening move in what Carmen intended to be a longer game. Well, two could play that game. Carmen wanted to minimize Madison. I would do the opposite. Carmen wanted to make Madison invisible. I would make sure she shined brighter than ever. Christmas was only 4 months away. I had some planning to do. 3 months after Carmen's wedding, which had proceeded without Madison and me in attendance, I began planning the most important Christmas celebration of my life. Every year since Madison was born, I had hosted Christmas Eve dinner for our extended family. 23 people gathered in my home for Patricia's famous ham, Uncle Frank's terrible jokes, and the chaotic gift exchange that had become tradition. It was the one event that brought everyone together, and the one event I controlled completely. This year would be different. I started with small changes that no one would notice until it was too late. Instead of ordering the usual red and gold decorations, I selected a sophisticated silver and deep blue theme. Instead of traditional holiday music, I curated a playlist featuring classical pieces, including several of Madison's favorite violin concertos. But the real transformation would be in the focus of the celebration itself. I called Madison's violin teacher first. Mrs. Rodriguez, I'd like to organize a small performance showcase for Madison at our Christmas Eve gathering. Could you help me prepare some pieces that would highlight her growth this year? What a wonderful idea, Bonita. Madison has made remarkable progress since receiving her scholarship. I think a 15-minute recital would be perfect. Next, I contacted Madison's academic advisor at school. I'm putting together a celebration of Madison's achievements this year. Could you help me compile her accomplishments for a presentation? Absolutely. Madison's scholarship to Whitmore Academy is just the beginning. Her essay on music therapy won the state competition in October. Her volunteer work at the Children's Hospital has been exceptional. She's also been accepted for the summer intensive at Berklee College of Music. I had missed some of these updates in the chaos following Carmen's wedding. My daughter had been achieving incredible things while our family was focused on wedding drama. I spent the following weeks creating a comprehensive celebration of Madison. I ordered custom photo displays showcasing her musical journey from age 5 to 15. I commissioned a professional recording of her playing Vivaldi's Winter Concerto. I even arranged for her violin teacher and several classmates to attend the party. The invitation list expanded beyond family for the first time ever. Madison's best friends Emma and Lily would be there with their parents. Her study group from advanced placement classes received invitations. 3 of her fellow scholarship recipients would join us. I was creating a community that celebrated Madison instead of tolerating her. Carmen called 2 weeks before Christmas, fishing for information about the party plans. So, what's the menu this year? Should I bring anything special? Just yourselves, I replied cheerfully. I'm handling everything. The guest list is the same as always. A few additions. You'll see. Carmen's voice took on an edge. Additions? Like who? Some of Madison's friends and their families. I thought it was time to expand our circle. The silence stretched uncomfortably. Bonita, Christmas Eve has always been about family. Madison's friends are like family to us now. You'll enjoy meeting them. I could practically hear Carmen's brain working, trying to figure out what I was planning. But I gave her nothing else to work with. Patricia called the next day. Carmen is concerned about Christmas Eve. She says you're changing everything. I'm hosting a celebration that honors all the important people in our lives, Mom. Isn't that what Christmas should be about? Since when do we invite outsiders to family Christmas? Since I decided that the people who truly support and celebrate Madison deserve a place at our table. Patricia's tone sharpened. Are you trying to make some kind of point, Bonita? I'm trying to make Christmas special for my daughter. I would think you'd want that too. The conversations continued throughout December. Various family members called to express confusion, concern, or outright disapproval of my plans. But I remained vague about the details, while staying firm about the changes. Madison noticed the increased activity, but didn't ask many questions. She was focused on preparing for her winter recital at school and finishing her college applications. She trusted me to handle the family dynamics, just as I trusted her to excel in everything she touched. 2 days before Christmas Eve, Derek called me directly for the first time. "Bonita, Carmen is really upset about this Christmas situation. She feels like you're trying to embarrass her." "How would celebrating Madison embarrass Carmen?" "Look, we all know Madison is talented, but Carmen thinks you're going overboard to prove a point." "What point would that be?" Derek's pause was telling. "That Madison is better than the rest of the family's kids." "Derek, Madison is the only teenager in our immediate family. She's not competing with anyone." "Carmen doesn't see it that way. She thinks you're setting Madison up to make everyone else feel inadequate." I realized then that Carmen had shared her insecurities with Derek, probably framing Madison's achievements as some kind of personal attack on their future family. "Derek, I'm hosting a party that celebrates the most important teenager in my life. If that makes Carmen uncomfortable, she's welcome to stay home. You know she won't do that." "Then I guess she'll have to find a way to cope with seeing Madison appreciated and celebrated." When I hung up the phone, I felt a profound sense of clarity. Carmen had spent months trying to diminish Madison. Now she was about to experience what it felt like when Madison took center stage with the full support of people who genuinely loved her. Christmas Eve was 48 hours away, and I was ready for the revolution I had been quietly planning for 3 months. Carmen wanted to play games about Madison's worth? Perfect. Let the games begin. Christmas Eve arrived with the first snowfall of the season, blanketing my neighborhood in pristine white. As I put the finishing touches on the decorations, I felt a sense of anticipation I hadn't experienced in years. The first guests to arrive were Madison's friends and their families. Emma's parents brought flowers and enthusiasm. Lily's mom offered to help in the kitchen. The scholarship recipients from Madison's program came with their instruments, ready to support their friend's performance. By 6 o'clock, my house was filled with the warm chatter of people who genuinely cared about Madison. The contrast to our usual family gatherings was striking. Instead of the underlying tension that typically characterized our holidays, there was an atmosphere of genuine celebration and joy. At 6:30, my extended family began arriving. Aunt Beverly walked in first, stopping short when she saw the transformed living room. Madison's accomplishments covered every surface in elegant displays. Her scholarship certificate was framed prominently above the fireplace. Photos of her volunteer work at the Children's Hospital lined the mantel. The custom banner reading celebrating Madison's extraordinary year stretched across the bay window. "Oh my," Aunt Beverly whispered, her eyes wide. Uncle Frank and Cousin Jennifer followed, their expressions shifting from confusion to understanding as they took in the celebration around them. Carmen and Derek arrived fashionably late, as always. Carmen wore a red dress that screamed, "Look at me," but her confidence wavered the moment she stepped into my living room. "What is all this?" she asked, her voice tight, with barely controlled emotion. "This is Madison's celebration," I replied warmly. "We're honoring her incredible achievements this year." Derek scanned the room, taking in the young faces, the musical instruments, and the obvious focus on my daughter. His jaw tightened with disapproval. Madison appeared from the kitchen, radiant in a deep blue dress that complemented the decorations perfectly. She moved through the room gracefully, introducing herself to family members who had never taken the time to really know her, chatting easily with her friends, and helping serve appetizers with natural poise. Carmen watched her niece with undisguised resentment. Every smile Madison received, every compliment about her achievements, every moment she commanded attention seemed to physically pain Carmen. At 7 o'clock, I called everyone to gather in the living room for Madison's performance. "Thank you all for being here tonight," I began. "Christmas has always been about celebrating the gifts we've been given, and this year, I wanted to celebrate the greatest gift in my life. Madison has had an extraordinary year, and she deserves to be honored by the people who love her." Madison stepped forward with her violin, composed and confident. She had chosen 3 pieces that showcased different aspects of her talent: a classical concerto that demonstrated her technical skill, a contemporary piece that showed her artistic interpretation, and a Christmas carol that connected to the holiday spirit. As the first notes of Vivaldi filled the room, something magical happened. The earlier tension dissolved into genuine appreciation for Madison's gifts. Even Patricia, who had been skeptical about the evening's focus, found herself moved to tears by her granddaughter's performance. But not everyone was enchanted. Carmen sat rigidly in her chair, her face a mask of barely suppressed fury. With each note Madison played, with each appreciative murmur from the audience, Carmen's anger grew more visible. When Madison finished her final piece to enthusiastic applause, Carmen could no longer contain herself. "Well," she announced loudly, standing up in the middle of the continued applause, "this is certainly different from our usual Christmas." The room fell silent. Madison lowered her violin, uncertainty flickering across her face for the first time all evening. "Carmen," I said quietly, "Madison just gave us a beautiful gift. Did she? Or is this just another performance designed to make the rest of us feel inadequate?" The words hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Several of Madison's friends shifted uncomfortably. Emma's father looked shocked by the hostility. Derek stood up beside his wife. "Carmen's right. This whole evening feels like it's designed to show off rather than celebrate family." Madison's face flushed with embarrassment and hurt. I felt my protective instincts surge, but before I could respond, something unexpected happened. Aunt Beverly spoke up from her chair near the fireplace. "Excuse me, but I think this evening has been wonderful. Madison is talented and hardworking, and she deserves to be celebrated." "Thank you, Aunt Beverly," Madison said softly. Carmen whirled around to face her aunt. "Of course you'd say that. You don't have children competing with the golden child here." The phrase golden child landed like a slap. Patricia gasped. Uncle Frank looked appalled. But it was Madison who responded with devastating calm. "Aunt Carmen, I'm not competing with anyone. I'm just trying to be the best version of myself. I'm sorry if that makes you uncomfortable." Carmen's face turned red with rage. "Don't you dare speak to me like that, you little brat. You think you're so special with your violin and your scholarships, but you're just a spoiled child who gets everything handed to her." The room erupted. Several family members began speaking at once, some defending Madison, others trying to calm Carmen down. Derek looked mortified by his wife's outburst. Madison's friends and their parents watched the family drama unfold with obvious discomfort. But Madison stood tall in the center of the chaos, her violin still in her hands, and spoke with a maturity that silenced everyone. "I'm sorry you feel that way about me, Aunt Carmen. I've never wanted to make anyone feel bad. I just wanted to share my music with my family." Carmen's response was swift and vicious. "Your family? Let me tell you something about family, little girl. Family means not constantly showing off and making everyone else look bad. Family means knowing your place." That was the final straw. I stepped between Carmen and Madison, my voice deadly calm. "Get out of my house." "What?" "You heard me. Take your husband and get out of my house. Now." Carmen looked around the room, expecting support that didn't come. Even Patricia looked shocked by her daughter's behavior. "You can't be serious. It's Christmas Eve." "I'm completely serious. You just called my daughter names and told her to know her place in front of everyone who loves her. Leave. Now." Derek grabbed Carmen's arm. "Come on, we're leaving." But Carmen wasn't finished. As they reached the door, she turned back with one final attack. "Don't think this is over, Bonita. You've shown everyone what you really care about tonight. Madison might be your golden child, but she's going to learn that the world doesn't revolve around her precious little talents." The door slammed behind them, leaving the rest of us in stunned silence. It was Madison who broke the tension, her voice clear and strong. "Well, that was awkward. Should we have dessert now?" The laughter that followed was healing. The rest of the evening proceeded beautifully, but something fundamental had changed in our family dynamics. Carmen had revealed her true feelings about Madison in front of everyone who mattered. There would be no going back from this moment. As the last guest left that night, Madison hugged me tightly. Thank you, Mom. Tonight was perfect, even with the drama, especially with the drama. Now everyone knows where you stand, and where I stand. That feels good. She was right. The lines had been drawn clearly, and I was proud of which side we stood on. The confrontation I had been expecting came 2 days after Christmas, on a gray Thursday morning that matched the mood perfectly. Carmen, Derek, and Patricia arrived at my house without warning, their faces set with grim determination. I watched through the window as they marched up my front walk like a delegation of doom. Madison was upstairs practicing violin, the sweet strains of Bach floating down from her room. I considered sending her to a friend's house, but decided she was old enough to witness this final chapter of our family drama. We need to talk, Patricia announced the moment I opened the door. By all means, come in, I replied, stepping aside to let them enter. They arranged themselves in my living room like a tribunal. Carmen chose the center of the couch. Derek stood behind her like a bodyguard, and Patricia took the armchair she always preferred during family meetings. Bonita, Patricia began. What happened on Christmas Eve was unacceptable. I agree completely. Carmen's behavior toward Madison was appalling. Carmen leaned forward aggressively. My behavior? You humiliated me in front of strangers by turning Christmas into a shrine to your daughter. I celebrated Madison's achievements in my own home. If that felt humiliating to you, perhaps you should examine why. Derek stepped forward, his voice patronizing. Bonita, you need to understand something about family dynamics. When one child is constantly elevated above others, it creates resentment and division. Carmen is just trying to protect the family unit. Protect it from what? A talented, hardworking teenager? Protect it from the favoritism that's been going on for years, Carmen snapped. Everyone in this family walks on eggshells around Madison because you've made her into some kind of untouchable princess. I felt my anger building, but I kept my voice level. Madison has never demanded special treatment. She's earned recognition through her hard work and talent. Patricia intervened with the voice she used to use when Carmen and I were children fighting over toys. Girls, this has gone far enough. Bonita, you need to apologize to Carmen for embarrassing her on Christmas Eve. Carmen, you need to apologize for your outburst. Then we can all move forward as a family. Apologize? I stared at my mother in disbelief. Carmen called my daughter a brat and told her to know her place. She spent months undermining Madison's achievements. She excluded Madison from her wedding based on lies. And you want me to apologize? Carmen's eyes glittered with triumph. Finally, some honesty. You're still angry about the wedding. This whole Christmas thing was revenge, wasn't it? No, Carmen. It was justice. Justice? Derek laughed harshly. You call turning a family gathering into a concert recital justice? That's when I realized they truly didn't understand what they had done wrong. In their minds, celebrating Madison was the problem, not attacking her. I walked to my desk and pulled out the folder I had been preparing for months. Since we're talking about honesty, let me share some things with you. I opened the folder and removed my phone, pressing play on a voice recording. Carmen's voice filled the room. Look, I'm sorry if Madison's feelings are hurt, but this is my wedding. I get to decide who fits the vision Derek and I have created. You know how Madison can be. She draws attention to herself with all that violin stuff and her academic achievements. This day needs to be about Derek and me, not about your daughter's latest accomplishment. Carmen's face went white. You recorded our private conversation? I recorded our conversation where you admitted that excluding Madison was about jealousy, not age restrictions. But there's more. I pulled out printed emails and text message screenshots. Here's the email thread where you told Derek's mother that Madison's achievements were probably inflated by a pushy stage mother. Here are the texts where you suggested to cousin Jennifer that Madison might be under too much pressure to succeed. Patricia grabbed the papers, scanning them with growing horror. Carmen, you actually wrote these things? I was just expressing concerns about Bonita pushing Madison too hard. Were you expressing concerns when you called Madison's school to investigate her grades? I continued. Or when you contacted her violin teacher to question the legitimacy of her scholarship? Derek stepped forward. You're taking private conversations out of context. Am I? Let me read this text you sent to Carmen last week. I held up my phone again. I think Christmas proved your point about the favoritism. Madison clearly thinks she's better than everyone else. We need to make sure our kids don't grow up feeling inferior to their cousin. The room fell silent, except for the sound of Madison's violin drifting down from upstairs. Box Partita number 2. Complex and beautiful, and requiring years of dedication to master. Patricia looked at Carmen with dawning understanding. You've been sabotaging Madison? I've been trying to protect future grandchildren from growing up in Madison's shadow, Carmen shot back. Can you imagine family gatherings? When we have kids? Everything will still be about Madison's latest achievement while our children feel invisible. So you decided to make Madison invisible instead, I said quietly. Carmen stood up, her face flushed with anger and embarrassment. I'm not apologizing for protecting my future family. Madison gets enough attention. She doesn't need more. Derek moved to support his wife. Carmen's right. The favoritism in this family has gotten out of hand. Madison needs to learn that she's not the center of the universe. That's when Madison appeared at the bottom of the stairs, her violin still in her hands. She had been listening to everything. I've never asked to be the center of anyone's universe, she said calmly. I just wanted to be included in my family. But I understand now that you see my achievements as a threat instead of something to celebrate. Carmen turned on her with fury. Don't you dare play the victim here. You know exactly what you're doing when you perform or talk about your scholarships. You know you're making other people feel bad. Madison looked at her aunt with something that might have been pity. Aunt Carmen, your children aren't even born yet, and you're already afraid they won't be good enough. That's not my fault. That's something you need to work on. The wisdom of those words from a 15-year-old girl hung in the air like a benediction. Carmen exploded. How dare you psychoanalyze me, you little brat? This is exactly what I'm talking about. You think you're so mature and insightful, but you're just a spoiled child who has been told she's special her whole life. Patricia stood up abruptly. That's enough, Carmen. Carmen whirled to face her mother. Are you taking their side now, too? I'm taking the side of basic human decency. Madison is 15 years old, and you're attacking her like she's your enemy. She is my enemy. As long as she exists, my children will always be compared to her and found wanting. The words hung in the air like a curse. Derek looked shocked by his wife's admission. Patricia sank back into her chair, finally understanding the depth of Carmen's dysfunction. Madison spoke into the silence, her voice steady and strong. Aunt Carmen, I hope your children are happy and healthy and loved. I hope they find things they're passionate about and work hard to achieve their dreams. I will never see them as competition, and I'll celebrate every success they have. I'm sorry you can't do the same for me. With that, she turned and walked back upstairs, her dignity intact despite everything that had been thrown at her. Carmen and Derek left without another word. Patricia remained in her chair, staring at the evidence of her daughter's campaign against her granddaughter. I had no idea, she whispered. I thought you were being oversensitive about the wedding. I didn't realize Carmen was actively trying to undermine Madison. Now you do, I replied. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Patricia looked up at me with tears in her eyes. I'm going to learn how to be a better grandmother to Madison, and I'm going to figure out how to help Carmen before her jealousy destroys her completely. It was a start. Not perfect, but a start. 3 months later, spring had arrived in more ways than one. Madison was thriving like I had never seen before. The toxic cloud that had been hanging over our family gatherings for years had lifted, and my daughter was finally free to shine without apology. Her acceptance into the summer intensive program at Berkeley had been announced at school with great fanfare. Her essay on music therapy had been published in a national journal. Most importantly, her confidence had returned full force. no longer dimmed by the constant undercurrent of family resentment. Carmen and Derek had essentially isolated themselves from the extended family. They attended no gatherings, responded to no invitations, and maintained contact only with Patricia through brief, formal phone calls. Their marriage, according to family gossip, was struggling under the weight of Carmen's obsessive jealousy and Derek's controlling tendencies. Patricia, to her credit, had begun the difficult work of examining her own role in enabling Carmen's behavior. She started attending therapy and made genuine efforts to rebuild her relationship with Madison. "I realize I spent years making excuses for Carmen instead of protecting you," she admitted to Madison during one of their monthly lunch dates. "I was so focused on keeping peace that I forgot about doing what was right." Madison, with her characteristic grace, forgave easily and completely. "Grandma, you were trying to hold the family together. I understand that. But at your expense, sweetheart. That was wrong." The rest of the extended family had rallied around Madison in ways that surprised and touched me. Aunt Beverly started attending Madison's school concerts. Uncle Frank began sharing Madison's achievements on social media with obvious pride. Cousin Jennifer invited Madison to perform at her daughter's birthday party. It was as if the family had been waiting for permission to celebrate Madison openly. And my Christmas Eve revolution had given them that permission. On a warm Saturday in April, we hosted Madison's 16th birthday party in our backyard. Unlike previous years, there was no tension, no underlying current of resentment, no careful navigation around Carmen's sensitivities. Madison performed a new piece she had composed herself, inspired by her volunteer work with children at the hospital. The melody was hopeful and healing, much like our family had become. As the party wound down and guests began to leave, Patricia pulled me aside. "I got a call from Carmen yesterday," she said quietly. "How is she?" "Struggling. She wants to reconcile, but she's not ready to acknowledge what she did wrong. She still sees herself as the victim in all of this." I nodded. "That's her choice to make. My door is open if she's genuinely ready to change her behavior toward Madison. But I won't expose my daughter to more attacks for the sake of family peace." "I understand. And I support that completely." A few weeks later, Carmen did reach out directly, but her message confirmed what Patricia had warned me about. "Bonita, I think we should put all this unpleasantness behind us. Family is family, and Madison is growing up without her aunt in her life. I'm willing to forgive and forget if you are." Her text message was a masterpiece of manipulation. She positioned herself as the generous party offering forgiveness, while acknowledging no wrongdoing and taking no responsibility for the unpleasantness she had created. I shared the message with Madison, who had become my partner in navigating family dynamics. "What do you think, sweetheart?" Madison read the message twice before responding. "I think Aunt Carmen still doesn't understand what she did wrong. Until she does, nothing will really change. Are you okay with that?" "Mom, I have a family that celebrates me, friends who support me, teachers who believe in me, and opportunities that excite me. I don't need someone in my life who sees my happiness as a threat to theirs." My 16-year-old daughter had learned lessons about boundaries and self-worth that many adults never master. As Madison prepared for her summer program at Berkeley, I reflected on the journey we had traveled together. A year ago, she had been excluded from a wedding because her aunt couldn't bear to see her celebrated. Today, she was confidently pursuing her dreams, with the full support of people who genuinely loved her. Carmen's wedding exclusion, meant to diminish Madison, had actually freed us both to build a healthier family dynamic. By standing up to the bullying and manipulation, by refusing to sacrifice Madison's dignity for false peace, I had taught my daughter that she was worth fighting for. The last conversation I had with Carmen was brief and final. "Bonita, Derek, and I are expecting our first child in the fall. I hope this baby will bring our family back together. Congratulations, Carmen. I hope you raise your child in an environment where they can thrive without needing to diminish anyone else." The silence that followed told me she understood exactly what I meant. As I watched Madison pack for her summer program, her suitcase filled with sheet music and dreams, I knew we had made the right choices. She was heading into a world that would appreciate her talents, surrounded by people who saw her gifts as something to celebrate, not something to fear. Sometimes protecting the people you love means disappointing the people who don't understand love at all. Sometimes fighting for justice means accepting that some relationships can't be saved. But most importantly, sometimes the greatest gift you can give your child is the knowledge that they are worthy of celebration, respect, and unconditional love. Madison learned that lesson through watching me stand up for her, even when it cost us relationships with people who should have loved her better. And I learned that being a mother sometimes means being willing to be the villain in someone else's story, as long as you're the hero in your child's story. Our family is smaller now, but it's healthier. Our celebrations are more genuine because they include only people who truly want to be there. And Madison is thriving in ways she never could have, while walking on eggshells around others' insecurities. That's a trade I would make again in a heartbeat. Have you ever had to choose between family peace and protecting someone you love? How do you handle relatives who seem threatened by your children's achievements? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe for more family stories about standing up for what's right. Share this with someone who might need to hear that their children are worth fighting for. Thank you for listening. And remember, your child's light should never be dimmed to make others comfortable. Keep shining, keep celebrating, and keep fighting the good fight.